Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Cool. You don't have to be like this.
Like what?
You can be no. Like I like to sit like I don't know like this, because then you don't have to be like.
I know. I'm just a sucker for symmetry.
Oh,
I'm a symmetrical sucker.
I'm sorry.
New album coming out? Nah, it's not. It's not.
I'll never question you again.
That's right.
Before we get started, though, I do want to take a second to say thank you for being on here for the 10th episode. 10 episodes is a big mark. All right, clap!
Everybody, clap!
Thank you. There we go. No, but it is really cool. And Jake, I really appreciate you being here to help me with everything. I know that the crew's only going to get bigger from here. So with that being said, welcome back to Win the Night podcast. My name is Josh Lopez, and tonight I have a very special guest and a very great person to kick off this. I guess you could call it season 2, right? Please introduce yourself, a longtime friend from childhood.
Yeah, I'm from childhood. So I am already messing this up. My name is Nick Scarpinato, and I've been friends with both Jake and Josh for...
It's almost like it's on TV or something.
Yeah, just the Drake and Josh theme song, but like slightly different. There's insert audio of Jake instead of, they don't even say their names.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it.
It is such an honor to have you on here, and specifically for such a big milestone for us. Like I said, when I first started this podcast, I told you about it before it even became anything. I was just like, hey, I want to do this. And it was just a thought in my head at the time. And just like when you told me about the time where you wanted to go out and start playing shows and be a musician, it was you pushed me the same way that, I was like, dude, like, go for it. And that's what I heard from you. So here I am, and here you are. And I'm really glad to have you here. I just want to reel back a little bit. Let's go back down memory lane. This is gonna be a long one. I don't think we're gonna have to do this in like 3 or 4 episodes, man.
It's gonna be a trilogy. Yeah,
it's gonna be a
movie.
movie.
No recap either. So if you don't watch this episode or listen to this episode, and you try to start the next one, you're gonna be SOL, brother.
It's gonna be a Netflix series. But we met. Oh man, we met in 4th grade. But we didn't start actually talking in like 5th grade.
Yeah.
We all had a mutual friend that introduced us all in elementary school. And one of the things that I remember specifically is when we were introduced, when I was introduced to you specifically, I was our friend in common was like, hey, this is my friend Nick. Nick, this is Josh. And you just like turned around. And then you were like, oh, hi. And then you just like turned back and like ignored me until the next year.
I couldn't help. I grew up in a pen. I grew up with no socialization at all. No, I'm just kidding. I was just very shy. Uh-huh. And at the time, I don't know. That's an age where like I feel like you don't make a whole lot of new friends. Like you have friends. Yeah. And then that's just the category is like, oh, this is my friend at school who I see every day and I hang out with every single day. And then as soon as there's like an expansion pack, you're like, what what is this? Who are you? Are you just a cameo, or like did someone pay you to come here? So in my mind, I was like, oh, cool. And then I had no idea how to proceed from that point on. So I just
ignored you.
Just ignored you for a whole year.
And that's kind of like our that was our memory of meeting, right? And so a year goes by. And we have the same we were in the same classroom in 5th grade, Mrs. Clark.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if she like retired in our class, so I'd like to say I hope she's still around, but I don't know.
We don't know. Jury's still out.
Yeah.
I haven't tried to visit the school. I mean, probably because
you're not
seems like this close to a crime.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna risk that.
Yeah. That's
Biscuit's not worth the risk. It.
It's it's pretty good. It's a pretty good assessment of that situation. But yeah, 5th grade came by, and we sat, I believe, at the same table, if I'm not mistaken.
Was that before we were in the giant square with the space in the middle? Because I remember we had our desks set up like that.
That was near the end. I want to say near the end of the school year, because we had it in I don't know if you remember, there was like sections. So there was
right,
like a four
blocks,
four.
Yeah,
and then you were at my table at some point or another.
At some point,
and I want to say that the big square thing was near the end, but my memory's not that great of that year.
Yeah, the only memory I have from that specific setup was I remember I was sitting next to Anissa. Do you remember Anissa? Yeah. I had a huge crush on her only because it was a crush by proximity, right? Where like you hang out with someone long enough and you start to think like, I never thought you were so cute before. And then, they just become like the default. So I remember that specifically. Never had a crush on you. Probably why I don't remember
Yeah. That was my dream, actually.
Long since passed.
Yeah.
I don't think we can. I mean, we've gone too far down this road of friends.
Yeah, it's too late now.
So I don't want to ruin that.
Oh, that's terrible.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Yeah, 5th grade. It was definitely a weird year because the way that our school district was set up, I know even in other counties in Illinois, there's K through 12 schools where you will walk down a hallway, and I know it's specific parts of the school that have specific classes, but I just could never imagine being like a 13-year-old and walking past a 5-year-old in the same school.
Yeah.
Imagine the bullying, like the cross-class bullying that happens there.
Yeah.
A lot of 5-year-olds picking on 10-year-olds, surprisingly.
Yeah.
They don't have any empathy. They don't give a shit.
What's
in this coffee?
You put whatever's in there, so
it's the expired half and half.
It's got something to it. It's got a kick. It's a spicy half and half.
That was my knee.
Oh, rough.
So yeah, but our school was set up. We had one school was 1st through 5th. Then we went to middle school for 6th through 8th, and then we had high school freshman year through senior year. And 5th grade was a weird year because it felt like we knew that it was the end of our time at that specific school, but it
district.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like a graduation like you would imagine it would, given the way that it kind of split up. And so it kind of felt like a weird time to start being friends and hanging out because then we were going to like move schools entirely and meet all new people. And yet there was still this sort of comfort to it, knowing that like I had bonded with someone so closely that I got to share all these new experiences with in middle school.
Yeah.
And I feel like only strengthened our relationship in middle school. That being said, you used to bully me all the fucking time.
Absolutely, I did. Yeah, I absolutely. I tell the stories all the time,
and I try not to make you feel like shit about it. But
no, good job.
Take a headphones and just
walk out.
Is
that part of the skit?
Do I have to?
Is this where I laugh?
Yeah. But I don't know, man. I feel like being friends in middle school, it taught me a lot about myself. And there was a moment, I don't know if it was 6th grade or my parents still had a house phone, and we got off the phone on the house phone and we had some argument about something. I think I had left your house early because you and your brother were like making fun of me, and I just like didn't want to put up with that anymore. So I like threatened to go, and you were like, leave. And I walked home in the middle of us playing games. And then I think either you called me or I called you, and we were talking through our feelings, and I got off the phone, and I didn't think much of it until my mom, she comes around, and she was just like, I heard your conversation. You handled that very well, or something along those lines. The way that she described it to her friends, she was like, I didn't know he was that mature. And I'm like, rude. But also, up until that point, I don't know. I never had a friend who, because David, we know David. He's a very chill guy. Not that he's super agreeable, but like he's not picky. Most situations he's cool with. So when it came to that era in our lives, if we wanted to do something while we were hanging out, he was like, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah. But you and I were kind of at odds a lot of the time because like we had different sensibilities, common enough sensibilities to maintain our relationship even through arguments and stuff. But I feel like we were different enough that problems would arise. And then I always think about it between the three of us because we all had lunch at some point, and like, God, David was like the filling, and then we were both like the bread, but different kinds of bread. Like I was white bread.
I'm brown. Just say it.
You were whole grain. Yeah, whole grain because you were full of nutrients, and and I was very soft. And fat to the touch. Yeah. So anyway. So when we would get into arguments, I feel like it always felt like Double D, Eddie, and Ed, where David was obviously Ed because he was the tall one. He was the tall one. I was probably Double D because I was the nerdy one who never took off his hat. And then you were Eddie because not even that you were coming up with schemes all the time, but I felt like you were kind of like the leader and kind of dictating. Like, oh yeah, we're going to go to my house and we're going to play Gears because like we couldn't go to my house. And David had a trampoline, but other than that, we didn't want to go to his house. So we would go to your house, and your mom would make us like dinners, and like your house smelled very good because you had like the Glade like plug-in things.
Staple.
And, like, I remember that smell. When I smell it now, that smelly smell.
That smells smelly.
Thank you. When I smell that now, I'm like, oh my God, that's Josh's house. I remember sleepovers, and I remember ham and cheese and mayonnaise sandwiches. No, Miracle Whip. It was Miracle Whip.
No, they were actually mayonnaise.
It was mayonnaise?
Yeah.
I had tricked myself into thinking it was Miracle Whip.
I hate Miracle Whip. It's awful.
You heard it here first, folks. Breaking news.
Yeah, no, it was mayonnaise. Yeah,
Damn.
for sure.
No.
I think, I don't know if it might have been at some...
Thanks for just cutting me off because I was not going to come up with anything. That was a good move on your part.
I was just going to say, I think that the Miracle Whip was at your house because I remember being upset about it.
I think so too. Because I think you wanted to make a sandwich and I made peanut butter and jelly for myself. I must have because that's all I fucking ate was peanut butter jelly sandwiches, then peanut butter sandwiches, fruit snacks, a Capri Sun, and a random chip. And I remembered this because every day at lunch, y'all would steal something.
Oh, religiously.
like it got to a point where I just let it happen, and I couldn't
believe it.
I would walk up to the table, and both of you would be like, "All right, what's he got now? What's this dumbass got for us
I might
today?"
as well not eat because we're gonna eat really good.
Your mom's like, "You want me to pack your lunch, sweetie?" And you're like, "Nah, I'm good."
I'm about to eat a feast.
Nick's got flaming hots, so I think
sometimes he switches it up, so it might be interesting this time.
And all Capri Sun flavors taste the fucking same. There was no variety in my lunch aside from the chips.
I know that it's terrible that we stole food from you, but I just want to say that like the fruit snacks were like the best part.
Yeah, they were Walmart brand fruit snacks that were the smiley faces, and so I made it a point because when you get finished eating at lunch in middle school, sometimes you have a whole fucking like 50 minutes of lunch and you can't go anywhere, and there were no phones, not a phone in sight, and like you couldn't bring your Game Boys or anything to lunch because like some administrator would get all pissy and snatch it away from you or tell you to go to the principal's office or whatever. And so I think we made it a habit of mutilating our lunches a little bit, or mutilating my lunch.
Yeah, specifically yours.
Where we would take the Capri Sun things and we would blow it up through the straw and then start stabbing the people pictured on the Capri Sun packet. So we'd get headshots and, we'd stab the dudes in the dick. And with the smiley faces, I remember I would just try to cut them up,
I do remember
peel
that.
their faces off. Yeah. And do you remember when we killed all those cicadas
with the racket?
Yeah.
That was terrible.
We were fucked up.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, like looking back,
you wanted to take a look back.
Yeah,
you wanted to reel back,
but I did
no argument from me.
No argument from me, man. I definitely asked for it.
This is an expose.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, you suck, and this is how.
There's a guy with a boom mic that comes around the corner.
That cameraman from like what was it, the Springfield or Jerry Springer show where they're like athletes and they run after people.
It's just like shaky cam.
He is not the father. They take off in like a 50-meter dash. The interviews for those had to be insane. Are you a sprinter?
And then Steve Wilkos would grab them in a chokehold,
throw a chair for some reason.
You're not getting away from me. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Something about your lunch.
Yeah. I don't know, something about his nose. You and your nose will not. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, lunch was fine. Middle school was great. I didn't go to the same high school as you two. I did not go I moved 10 minutes away. So I went to Bremen instead of Oak Forest.
I just want to interrupt because I just need to explain that chapter was really rough. Sorry to
no.
That chapter was awful because like at the time, right, like I was a kid that didn't know how to express himself, and so like bullying was like the only way I could let you know that I care about you in a weird way. And so like even to this day, bullying, and not just like me, but like my siblings too, like bullying is part of like I care about you. Like if I didn't like you, I would just not speak to you. Like
right.
And so is that healthy? No. And so like looking back at it now, right? Like I had to think about it, and I apologize to you profusely, to this day, because like I can look back at that and go, we made his life absolutely miserable during those years, and
it turned out all right. Look at me now,
crying in the corner. No, but to be fair, right? Like, yeah, no, I wasn't a good friend to you early on, and that's one of the things that like I've for the longest time wanted to repair and tried to do the best that I could and as an adult to repair that. And I get it, we're all kids and we just don't know any better, but either way, you were a good friend to me throughout. And I do remember one time I asked you, I was like, Nick, why were you still friends with us then? You're like, because I didn't want to sit by myself.
That's the only reason. That's it. Well, because so not to undercut your very heartfelt message, which I love you, buddy, and I'm glad that as adults we can acknowledge that and still remain friends. But I remember very distinctly there was sort of like, as shitty as it is to admit, there was like a popularity hierarchy. It kind of felt like, where like I imagine I was on like the bracket above like the kids who nobody wanted to sit with, but they sat with each other. And like, I'm not going to name names because like that's totally shitty and mean, and it doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah. But at the time, I was like, I don't want to be friends with those kids because like, and I can't play the victim either. Like I bullied, kids that I thought, I could get away with bullying too, just because I feel like I also didn't really have a good way of expressing myself, and I didn't want to confront these feelings that I had with you guys, so I kind of just took it out on the kids that I thought were used to it, or however you want to think about it. But yeah, so I truly was like, it was a mix of, I'm genuinely friends with you guys. We have a lot of shared interests, even if a couple of them I was only interested in because you guys were interested in it, and I wanted to, like, I would not have listened to Metallica otherwise had it not been for you guys.
Yeah.
Like going to your house and watching the music video DVDs, and
I was terrible at that, wasn't I? Just, hey, we're gonna watch
it was
this
super often
and nothing else.
It was super often. It was like 9 out of 10 sleepovers. It was like, we're gonna play Gears 2. I'm gonna snipe you 100 times in Gridlock and not let you kill me. And then we're going to go to sleep watching the Metallica videos until that's over, and then I'll put on Nick at Night, and then we'll fall asleep to George Lopez reruns.
Yep.
And but through that, now like Gears 2 is one of my favorite games ever, and Metallica was my favorite band for a really long time.
Yeah.
And when I started writing music, I thought that I had to write music like Metallica, and that's how deeply ingrained our friendship was for me. And I don't say this all the time, but whenever I talk about middle school, I always mention, from my perspective, I think us going to different high schools was probably the best thing for our friendship, because it kind of forced both of us to grow apart from each other, so that when we did hang out, we could respect one another's paths that we have both chosen, and things out of our control. Like, I didn't choose to move, but I did choose to start playing music and start doing theater and all of these things that I probably otherwise wouldn't have done had I not been on my own at a new school where I didn't know anybody. And I can't speak for any significant changes that you yourself made in your life, but I just know that when we came back together to hang out again, the dynamic was it was a lot healthier. It was a lot
for
better.
sure.
And that, carries into today as well, where, like you mentioned at the top, we both have our different interests that don't really overlap, but we're still supportive of one another. And seeing how far we've come from you stealing my fruit snacks to now, I get to be a part of your podcast. It's amazing, and it's beautiful, and it reminds me of how amazing it is to be alive.
It's a full circle moment.
Kuna Matata.
Yeah. Whatever the Germans said back in 1983.
Germans.
Insert random time and space.
Each lion king.
But you have to say it angrily, or it's not going to work.
No, I don't know any German. Scar was a dictator. Scar was the Lion Hitler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If Mufasa was the Lion King, then Scar was the Lion Hitler.
Was it?
Write that down. That's. I said that. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, though, I do think that it's right. But you got it. There you go.
No, that's empty. I'm looking for my water bottle. Anyway, it's not
right there. But just before we get, because I do want to cover, obviously what happened after you ended up moving. But before we get to that part, like the part that was rough for me was because at the time it was just us three. And like, I was never, for me, it wasn't like important. You mentioned like the hierarchy of like social status. Like I never really cared for it. Like, in fact, I resented it. Like I didn't want anything to do with like popularity contests. I didn't want anything to do with like, well, I hope everybody like likes me and whatever. And so like, it was the way that I saw our group was like, it's us against the world. And so like when you were saying like you guys were moving, I remember specifically, and again, something that I regret looking back on, but I understand why, which was that like, I remember you were like, hey, we're looking at houses, and there's a house that we're looking at in Midlothian, and then there's a house we're looking at, and we might do an Oak Forest. And so I was like, dude, push for the one in Oak Forest. I remember specifically telling you that, like, let her know, like, you really want to be at Oak Forest. And it was just my selfish desire of, like, I want to keep my friend here. And, like, thinking back on that, like, I definitely, like, do regret that, but like you mentioned, it was the best thing because it forced me to, like, to figure out what it is that I was doing wrong as a friend, because it forced me to review the friendship. And I was like, okay, so, now that Nick is moving on, is he going to find new friends? Was I not a good friend to him? Like, and that's where that came from, was like, when you left, I realized that you had the opportunity now to have other friends. And so that you would most likely do that. And that maybe I wasn't that great of a friend to you. And so that's why I'm saying that chapter was a little rough for me, because, like you mentioned, David was kind of the glue that binded us, where, like, he was a good filter for the two of us, because our personalities, you were like the brightness in the room, and, like, I was more of the contrast. And so, like, we would often, like, I felt like if it was just us two for too long, it was like water and oil. Like, we couldn't mix for too long.
Sure.
But when you had David there was this, like, middle ground where, like, we didn't need to focus on, like, oh, like, I don't like that you're doing this, I don't like you're doing that. We would find something that all three of us, because at that point David was disagreeable enough to say, I don't want to do that, and then put up a fight for it.
Oh.
And that's where, like, he created that good diversity in our group, because not because, like, he willingly chose to be that way, but that was just his personality, where, like, if David didn't want something, he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
And where you were a little more agreeable, where, like, if that makes you happy, then we'll do it. Right.
Sure.
And so with David there, you could, like, fall back on, if I was saying something that you also didn't want to do, and David also didn't want to do, well, that's 2-1.
Oh yeah.
So
I would side with David any chance that I got if our views aligned, and I would just let him kind of be the champion of that ideal. I would let him kind of lead the charge, because he was super agreeable when it was something that he didn't mind doing, but even to this day, like, if there's something that really grinds his gears, or he's like, I'm not fucking doing that.
No, yeah, absolutely. And that's core David, is like, he's agreeable enough where, like, most things he'll be like, yeah, let's do it. But
Sure.
if he doesn't want to do something, he absolutely won't do it. And that's, good on him.
Right.
He's a good balance of that, of agreeableness and disagreeableness, where I was super disagreeable and you were super agreeable. So, like, we couldn't, like, it just wouldn't work with us at the time.
Yeah.
And so, like, leaving, you going off to your own path at Bremen, that was like you said, like, it forced me to review myself as a friend, and for you, I'm sure it did, many wonders for you, which I want to let you get the opportunity to explain.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was just I had become too reliant on my agreeableness, in a sense, where I didn't really feel like I had an identity of my own. I didn't really know what my likes and dislikes were, and who I was at the center of it all. And so going to a different school, that first year, freshman year, I don't think I was really friends with any of the guys that I still talk to today. It was a lot of walking past the pep rallies that we would have. I didn't go to a single game. I didn't really try out for things, at least not until the winter when I joined the swimming team. And then the spring I did baseball, because growing up and in middle school and elementary school, I did sports. Just the one sport, actually, baseball.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I got to do that. I got to do that in high school.
Yeah.
And I fucking hated it. And it was the worst. And I tried to write music like Metallica, and I couldn't do it. And I couldn't play solos, and I couldn't write a song, and I fucking hated it.
Right.
And it just felt weird once I realized that the people, for certain things, for listening to music, it was weird because like you weren't there to also like it. So I had to ask myself, like, do I really like this? Why do I like this? For baseball, it was my mom wasn't there watching all of the games like she was. And so when I was at practice and playing games, I was like, do I really fucking care about any of this? Mm-hmm. No, I don't. And so it was more of there wasn't as much deconstruction on my end as I imagine there might have been on yours. And I don't even want deconstruction might not have been the right word for it either, but I felt like that episode of Fairly Odd Parents where Timmy wishes that everyone was the same. I just like, it was a gray blob that could be molded into a couple of different things. And so I don't know how often we actually hung out that first year, that freshman year.
Actually, not much.
No, I remember I went to the homecoming game that year because I think Bremen played Oak Forest, and so I had a kind of a reason to be there anyway. But I got to see you guys, and it was a good time. But we didn't really do much outside of that because at that time we were still filling out furniture at my house. We got Riley, our puppy, who dude, he is like 13.
What a beast.
13. Yeah, I know. He's a beast. Little chunky guy.
No, like he's just like beast of a soul, still alive, man.
He's still kicking. So we were like navigating through a lot of change on our end. And I think sophomore year was finally the year that kind of a lot after the dust had settled, there was more time to figure out, okay, this is the path now. How do I navigate it instead of trying to figure out like where the path even was? I was like, all right, now this is something I can do. So I tried out for the fall play in my sophomore year of school. I started playing shows as a musician. I started writing songs, and later that year, I started doing group interpretation and speech club, which then turned into, doing marching band my junior year. And I felt like I finally found my footing. And so coming back to hanging out with you guys again, I just felt so much more comfortable with myself. And I didn't feel like I had to impress you guys anymore, which was huge for me as someone who, even now, I'm a huge people pleaser. I think that's part of the reason why I'm a musician, is just once I got that little bit of attention from people who wanted to pay attention to me because they, enjoyed having me around. Not that you guys didn't enjoy having me around, but I felt very validated, being on stage and doing something that, I wanted to do but wasn't sure if I was good at. So that boost in confidence for me made it a lot easier to come back to hang out with you guys and be like, hey, what's going on, guys? And we didn't even have to talk about it. Like, we never even acknowledged that, I think maybe like a couple years down the line, I think you had mentioned to me that like, hey man, you've changed, or some along those lines. Then, it was coming from a place of pride though. And that kind of, everything, it clicked without me even realizing that it clicked. And then looking back 3 years or so after, when we finally had that conversation of, we're different people now.
Yeah.
It gave me just a lot of clarity and like, after the fact clarity, I guess. So yeah, it was, so it's been a road. Well, and then there was post high school.
Yeah.
Where I moved to Decatur for school, so we were even further apart and hung out even less. And and that's kind of when I came to terms with the fact that like, oh, okay, so this is just going to keep happening every couple of years where there's a big change and I just live somewhere else and I'm surrounded by different people, because as a kid you don't really fully understand that, and I know there are plenty of kids that like move around like during elementary school years or whatever. And I joke about kids not having empathy all the time, because I'm like, yeah, fuck fuck kids. Like they don't give a shit. They don't, you know. But truly, I think it didn't hit me how monumental a change can happen in your life when, you know, there's a shift in the circle of people that are around you. Because as a kid, not that you take it for granted, but you don't even think about it. You know, you got like, I want McDonald's, I want chicken nuggets, and I want a toy. And then, you know, as an adult, even in high school, you're like, God, what do people think of me? Like, what am I gonna do after? What am I gonna do for the rest of my life? People start asking you, like, do you know what you're gonna do? You know, what you want to be when you grow up, and you have to actually start thinking about it because you're like, people are thinking about colleges, and people are, you know, and it's a huge existential time. And since then, since even high school, I feel like, you know, all of us have surrounded ourselves with so many different circles of people, and now it's just normal. But that first time that it happens and you're old enough to like at least partially process it, you know, it's huge. It affects you for like the rest of your life, you know, because like you could go from job to job to job as an adult and not even remember half of your coworkers, but like, you know, the second you graduate from middle school to high school and, you know, you start meeting new people, I don't know, the folks that were around you at that young an age, like they stick with you, you know?
Well, you know that there's like, there's also, we could get into like, there's like the science behind that, right? Like they say that if you have a relationship with somebody, whether friends or whatever, for more than 6 years, typically that's for life. And there's science behind it. I don't know the science. I am not a scientist. I just heard.
So you're not a scientist?
Then who are you?
What do you do?
Why am I here again? Anyway, no, but there is science behind that, but I think the important part is like when we all. This is the thing that I've noticed with everybody that I've interviewed, and I've said this like a million times on the podcast now, so I hope this doesn't get old, but it's the same, but it's literally the same thing that I notice is that all the guys that I grew up with, and that, you know, we went through high school together, and even like the guys that I was in the military with, we kind of all like exploded into like the galaxy of adulthood, right? Like we just like went out our separate ways very quickly. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, like I felt like everybody was like a million miles away. And like I didn't talk to you for a couple of years because, you know, you were out and, you know, building your own life, and I was out doing my own thing. And so like we didn't really have much contact for quite a while. And so that was the case with just about everybody I grew up with, including like my closest friends. And so like when like everything kind of slowed down, because at some point, like typically it's right about now, it's right at like mid-20s to like about now where things start to slow down a little bit, where like we're not rapidly growing, we're no longer like, we're slowing down now, where it's like we figured out who we want to be, if not who we are. And so things are now coming to a not a halt, but like starting to slow down in pace. And so now you can kind of like look around and be like, okay, what do I want around? Yeah. Because that's how it got to me is at some point I was like, okay, so I've done what I've wanted to do. Things have kind of slowed down now. You know, I need to like see what everybody else is up to now. Yeah. Because the things that I missed out on, some people are parents now. Some people have gone through like, hello. Some people are parents now, and like, it's just like they've gone through like life altering experiences. Yeah. Everybody included. So I think like this is a good time. Like it's been a good time to come back and be like, how are you doing? So just like, how are you doing? Like, are you okay?
Just like at a party where you're just chatting it up with someone and you're like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And hand on the shoulder, and you're like, but how are you doing? Are you?
And in all seriousness though, nobody has stopped to even ask themselves that. After everything they've gone through, and then we come back and go, oh wow, there was a lot there. That's all right, man. Just enjoy the bottle, man. You're good. You might as well just break
ASMR.
Just break the ice, won't you? But yeah, like that was something that ultimately, like, we wanted to cover anyway was that part of like how have you been, and like in all seriousness.
Yeah, not a bit. Never a bit.
In all seriousness.
Not even like 1% a bit. It's like all seriousness all the time.
All the
Sorry,
time.
I know I'm doing a bit, but no, I mean I agree. I feel like your mid-20s. First of all, fuck whoever said that the 20s were the best years of your life, because anyone who's ever lived their 20s and say it's the best time to be alive, you don't trust them, or they're dead. Because I feel like even every show you watch with like an ensemble cast, this is the example I always jump to: Friends, New Girl, How I Met Your Mother, they're all in their fucking late 20s or 30s. And it's like, once life starts to plateau a little bit, and like you said, you get to take a look around and observe your surroundings, and because you got to remember, Till Death Do We Part was instilled at a time where people lived to be like 25. It was
That's
like,
fair.
we're going to get married at 15. We're going to live for 10 years. We're going to pop out some kids, and then we're going to, hit the dust.
Yeah.
Hit the
Dusty
dust. Oh, hit the whoosh. Yeah, sorry. Remember Oregon Trail? I was just talking.
I didn't want to.
Yeah. I teach kids now. I teach voice lessons, and one of my kids, Henry, shout out Henry. I'm not going to give your last name out.
That's
here.
fine.
It's I don't have to explain that to you.
No,
You
you
get it.
don't.
But him and I, he's a very inquisitive kid, very eccentric, and half the time he comes in to do voice lessons, we don't even sing. He is just like, he is a big fan of, like, do you remember Strong Bad?
I don't, but Jake apparently does.
He's got like a red like luchador mask, and he talks like this, Strong Bad. And at some point I feel like he was on Adult Swim, but like they don't swear. There's no like, but he fucking loves Strong Bad, and he'll show me like entire clips from the Strong Bad episode. He showed me like a Fallout 4 like New Vegas like video essay in our lesson, because all of the music that he listens to is either from the Fallout soundtrack, or like they're all these songs that predate the 1900s. They're all like whatever they, not exhibition, but they're all like, we're exploring the United States of America,
Yeah.
all those kind of songs. So anyway, Oregon Trails, we played that in a computer class. I never made it too far, but I talked to one of my kids about it. Yeah.
It was definitely a game that I didn't enjoy very quickly, because like once people get diseases in your family,
You're fucked.
Yeah, it's over. Like
The game's done.
You can't like you can't go to Walgreens and get like an over the counter.
Just a prescription.
Yeah, like I'm sick.
You walk into a Walgreens, you're like, I'm sick.
What can I get? Like there's no like pharmacist. There's no pharmacist that is like, oh yeah, you you take this and you'll be fine.
There's no immediate care in the in Oregon Trail.
No. Sometimes your family members have to eat you, or whatever.
Vice versa.
Or vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta cook them up. I don't think that's an option in the game. Don't quote me.
No, probably not.
Quote the other thing that I said to quote, but don't quote this.
That was one of people talk about like floppy disks, and we never really got to enjoy that era of gaming.
No, we all kind of existed because I was made in 1995. That's when I was manufactured, and I feel like that was a time where we lived in both the pre-digital age, and now we live in the post-digital age. So we're millennials. I think we're millennials.
We are.
Yeah. So we can talk about floppy disks, and then there's going to be, like, I'm sure you have a huge preteen audience. So like there's going to be a 13-year-old kid that's like, what the fuck is a floppy disk? They made them floppy?
Well, and then it was even, I mean, we did get to see it. Like I remember there were floppy disks in the computer itself.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's that? And they're like, you don't need to know about that.
You don't need to know.
And then they're like, but use this CD instead. And I was like, okay, cool. But you have to use 2 of them because the game will stop working. if you don't eventually pop in the second disc.
That's back when anything that had a screen also had a big fucking dump truck of an ass. Just like the computers that were just like monitors and then like towers.
I always saw it like a nose, like a big nose.
So we're thinking opposite. We're thinking opposite poles.
Probably, yeah. Well, I mean, that's just in character.
Yeah, I'm an ass guy and you're a nose guy.
No, that's not.
No,
that's not what I was going for, actually. But do continue.
Yeah, so I've been an ass guy for as long as I can remember.
Oh, all
right. No, we don't have to. Let's not talk about that. But yeah, getting back to the point.
Yeah.
We're at an age where, I'm going to be 28 in a month. This is the oldest I've ever been. I don't know I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I just started playing music full time as a full time job in March of 2023. And like, this will be my first, half a year trying to kind of like, I feel like I'm finally at a point that for all of those years working all those shitty part-time jobs, I'm finally at a point where I'm like, back then I would say if I only got like 8 gigs a month, I could quit this shitty ass part-time job and I could do music full time. And now I'm here and I'm doing it, and I have to ask myself like, okay, but like what else? Like what more? And when you're a kid, even up to like, I feel like 24, 25, like there are so many decisions that are kind of like made for you, like your life for like most people, not all people, because I know everyone's situations are different. But I feel like for a lot of people, at least a lot of our friends, there was like a trajectory. There was an itinerary. It was like, all right, you're going to go to elementary school, then you go to middle school, then you go to high school. If you like something in high school, you can go to college, you can go to community college, and that's sort of where like it kind of trails off. But everyone gets jobs, everyone goes to school, everyone has crushes, or has to figure out what a crush is. And like now we're at a point where there's no itinerary, there's no rule book. And as someone who appreciates a good itinerary, I am so confused. I don't know if I don't have Apple Maps, Google Maps. Fuck Apple. I'm not gonna. You know what? I'm not gonna make any enemies. I'm not gonna make any. I'm sorry, Jay.
Oh well. Well,
I love Apple Maps. They're so good. They're the second best map app that I own on my phone.
They're the apps that I don't use.
Out of the 2 map apps, it's the second best.
I would agree with that.
Silver medal. So I don't know. And especially in this fucking line of work where like I'm making my own schedule and I'm in charge of what I do day to day, and there's no boss to tell me to clock in or like, shape up. I have to be that for myself, which is so terrifying day in and day out.
You're technically an independent contractor.
Oh yeah. That's how I have to fill out my tax forms. I have to fill out W-9s for, if I do a private event, or if I do like just a couple of days ago, I played out in Crete. I played this, Acorn Fest where I had to fill out a W-9 to get paid, because they have to, include that in their tax report, at the end of the year. It's scary and exciting to be forced to find your own footing in life. And I feel like, I don't know, coming back to it, our friendship had a lot of that, not to, stretch this too far, but I feel like even just describing how we had to kind of figure out who we were without each other, like after middle school, scary. Yep. And, there wasn't a whole lot of help, and like, there's no like Josh and Nick instruction manual, right. There's no like strategy guide.
Yeah.
So, now as adults who were all like involved in, creatively driven careers, it's kind of amazing that we're all still talking to each other.
Yeah. After all that,
even have time to like see each other in person and hang out. And 3, I know I'd used letters before, but I had to switch it up. And 3 are like finding success in all of our respective areas, because all of those years before, I don't even know if we made jokes about like being famous or whatever, but you always think about it. You always think about like what would happen if like we had everything figured out, and that question gets bigger and bigger as we get older. And like, I don't know, it's one of those unanswerable things because I feel like there's always something that you don't have figured out. I just told myself, sorry.
No, yeah. No, I was just about to agree with I was just about to agree with exactly what you're saying is like there's really no instruction manual on how to do this. And like the crazy part is that everything is so, like you mentioned, like it's so, the vision is like perfect. Like you're going to go to elementary school for all these years and then you're going to go to, like it's drawn out for you in this little nice guide. Yeah. And then it's like, and that's one of the things that like I think about asking, like sometimes I ask my mom, like, how come like I didn't get further guidance beyond that point? Like I was like, oh, well, I just don't know.
How's Hair Topics doing, by the way?
Still kicking, still going strong.
Oh,
yeah.
Every time I stop by that Dunkin' across the street all the time now because it's on my way to 294, which I use all the time, and I see the Hair Topics logo and I'm like, I wonder how Lydia's doing.
Well, her name is Lilia.
That's our time, folks. Thanks for having me, Josh.
We're gonna have to dethrone you from best boy.
No.
but pretty close.
Her and I haven't talked in forever.
Yeah. You got to catch up sometime.
I got to get a haircut.
Let's start with that one, huh? What's up, Lydia?
She doesn't listen to this, right? Does she watch the podcast?
Oh, she definitely does. And she's gonna watch this too.
Lilia, I'm so sorry. Please, let me be friends with your son still. Let me come over every once in a while.
We don't even
just if you could find it in your heart to just like the next time that I come over, if like we're hanging out and we're playing Gears of War. Please don't put cyanide in my sandwich. That's all I ask.
Fine, but it'll be like something else instead, like arsenic.
Rat poison?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so quick.
Speaking of that, I do want to, there's a memory specifically that I have of me being a terrible friend, but it kind of worked out.
Failed successfully.
Yeah. Which was that like when we had you over for sleepovers, like I remember you had a very selective palate of like what you wanted to eat and what you would.
I was a picky eater.
What you would not eat at all, and like and I was like, well, I don't really. Well, you're gonna eat it because like.
Yeah, you were very adamant. Give me war flashbacks to hearing that from my dad. Like you in 5th grade being like, no, you're gonna eat it. I was like, yes, Dad. Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
That's awful. That's terrible.
I thought we were going to talk about daddy issues on the podcast, so I like kind of came prepared with that mentality.
Yeah, but that's awful for me to figure that. I never knew.
I mean, it's fine. I just before we get too far, if I may interrupt yet again.
Yeah. Sure. I'm used to it.
With me, you definitely are with me.
It's all good, man.
My first memory of actively trying a food that I wouldn't have otherwise tried because of the people that I was with, which is a very long setup for like the rest of the sentence. My first experience trying something was at Wendy's with you and David. The Baconator just came out. I only learned this on Good Mythical Morning recently that the Baconator came out and like
it's a lovely show.
It's so good. They were doing like a history of like Wendy's or whatever, and they were like the Baconator came out in like 2011, 2012, something like that. Very recent, because they had signs on the menu that was like try the new Baconator or whatever, and you guys wanted to try it.
Absolutely.
And I got one, and I remember looking at the picture on the menu, and it's like, what's that white stuff? And you're like, I don't care. Just you're gonna eat it. And I was like, okay. Well, I don't even think you said you were gonna eat. I was just like, yeah, you know what? I'll get one. I'll get a Baconator, and it was amazing.
I want to specifically what we did. I remember like the exact memory when we had to kind of break you into slowly like transitioning into eating something else, because like I refused to see you eat cereal every time you slept over for every meal. And so
I ate a lot of cereal.
And so I was like, we used to eat, I don't know if you remember the sausage egg McMuffins we used to have all the time. And like, you were like, okay, but like, can I take out everything?
Can I just have the muffin? Can I just have the English muffin, please?
And then I was like, no. and then I was like, it's a sandwich together, so like you have to eat all of it because it comes as a package.
It's a package deal.
And then you I remember like how like bothered you were by it, but you didn't want to upset me. So.
I also didn't have a backbone, so I wasn't going to tell you no. I wasn't gonna say no.
But see, this is like where it worked out, right? Because after that was when you were willing to like try, like, oh, I'll try it, right? And then I wasn't a terrible friend anymore, where I was like, well, you're gonna eat it anyway if you don't like it, and I was like fine with it.
But because we went out to go get sushi, and that was my first time having sushi, and I took a commemorative photo with a bottle of sake that I took home.
That's right.
And I was tipsy. And now sushi is like,
we weren't kids, by the way. We were adults when that happened.
Don't tell them that. It makes for more compelling. Okay.
Well, we have.
You ruined it.
Well, okay.
Shit the bed.
Well, I'm just gonna leave. Bye.
This isn't even our bed. This is an Airbnb.
Yeah.
So we gotta clean that shit up.
Pretty nice one at that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like, when thinking about the friend lottery, I think I got pretty lucky in a lot of regards, and you're one of the regards, and I'm very lucky to have met you and to still be friends with you all these years later, now that we are adults and we can drink sake legally. And I feel like I can share these big life events with you, even if we don't see each other for a long time, because that's just life now.
We're just kind of stuck together now, and you just kind of have to accept it. And that's the beautiful side of it, right? Where
there are definitely two sides.
Yeah.
My side and then your side of it.
But in all seriousness, I do appreciate that, because like I mentioned it before, is like at some point you could have just been like, well, I don't have to talk to these guys ever again, because you had that option many times, whether it was in high school, whether it was in college when we went our separate ways, or even after that, where we have these things where we always talk about, like every 2 years or so, we'll get back together, and then big things will happen and like changes, and then we're like, oh, what are you up to now? And then like there's this big evolution. Oh, like for you, when we started talking again recently, where I went to see your show, and it's like you have people that go see you regularly, and like you have people that at the end of the shows want to come talk to you, and it's like, hey, I loved when you did this, I loved when you did that. And it's like I remember you back in high school picking up a guitar for the first time, and like saying like, hey, I wrote like this song, and like hearing that, I'm like, this is really good. I remember the first time you played, you made a song about, I think like the first song you wrote, I don't want to say too much information about it, but I think it was like about
I want to hear about it.
Oh, okay.
I want to hear about this song that I wrote.
It was about your ex, I want to say, and it was like this terribly like painful heart song that you wrote, and I don't know if it's your first one. Like that's the first one I remember that you wrote.
I wrote a song in 2013, I think was my first song. It was called Red and Waiting, and I wrote it about a girl that I had a huge crush on who didn't like me back. And it just kind of like all spilled out, you know, sometimes a creative thing just kind of like vomits out of you. And, I was like, I didn't even want to play it. I didn't want to, I originally didn't even want to start writing songs. So the fact that like, I don't know, I felt good enough about it to like show people, I don't know. It's a testament to like how close we were that I wanted to show you this song that I wrote where I tear my guts out.
Yeah.
And I show you. Yeah. And it was like some of the corniest shit I've ever heard. But like when I showed it to people, like at the time, it's like you don't cringe at an outfit that you picked out for the 7th grade dance until you look at it years later. You're like, who let me walk out of the house looking like this?
Yeah.
It's like, who let me out of the house sounding like this? My mom? Probably. My dad wasn't around.
God. Well, it's hard to like pick up on that.
You can't. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll just scoop past that one. But in all seriousness, like the first song that I remember anyway, I should have said, is the song that you wrote about an ex that you had, and I remember when I heard that one, I was like, oh wow, like I hadn't seen that side of you ever, because from the time that I've known you, you've always been like the happy-go-lucky Nick, brings brightness into the room, Nick. Like that's how I had always known you. So when I heard that, I was like, where was this? Like, where was that Nick? Like I had just met that Nick for the first time. Was like, and it was, I didn't know how to feel about that in terms of like, I felt very sorry. That's kind of when I started to realize that like, maybe some of the things that I did were more hurtful than I thought because of what you showed and then what you actually felt underneath. And those songs also were like an example of that, of like, oh wait, he's a human being. And that was like my first experience hearing in that scenario, that side of you.
Yeah.
So now that we're a little bit close on time, I do want to kind of catch up with where you are now.
Oh, sure.
What are you up to these days?
Yeah. This is the part where I don't know how to talk. I forget about all of the chatterboxing I've done for the past like hour. So I am playing shows in the south suburbs of Chicago, the west suburbs. That is my full-time thing. So if you're in an area that I'm playing, follow me on Instagram and come see me. I might play, Nothing Else Matters by Metallica if you ask really nicely.
Or yell like I did.
Or if you yell it like Josh did.
Just play Nothing Else Matters,
bitch. But other than that, I'm teaching voice lessons once a week in Clarendon Hills. I am trying to find the motivation to get back on YouTube and TikTok and potentially start streaming again on Twitch. Just taking the most out of the time where I'm at in my life creatively and with the freedom that I have. So if you want to follow me or check out any of my things, my last name is very hard to spell, but it's the word Scar, the word pin, and then ATO. Also, it's probably going to be in the description.
We're going to probably around your face somewhere. We'll put links to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, we
Mike
got our
Wazowski,
expert in the back that'll take care of that.
Yeah. But speaking of, Jake, thanks for being here and, helping to, you are here. And, for those of you who can't, see them on camera, Jay is also a really good, middle school friend of ours. And, everything that I've said to Josh, also applies, to them as well. 'Cause this is just,
including the awful friend part.
No, you were always great to me. I felt like we were we were chubby kids, we in solidarity, yeah. But yeah,
I do have McMuffins, just the sleeves in my freezer. I'm not even joking. A bag of them.
What does that mean? The sleeves?
Just the muffin.
Yeah, not the bag. Just the little like.
It has a name.
No, I just called it that.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
So, playing a lot of music, trying to put content out there, and watching a lot of anime, which I never did until college. So, no, after college. Anyway, that's a story for a different podcast.
Weeb Nation is back.
We didn't even talk about Dragon Ball Z this whole time.
No, there's so much that we have to cover that an hour isn't going to do it any justice. So we're just going to have you back on again.
Yeah. Well, it would be my honor. It'd be my pleasure. Josh, you're great. You're amazing. Thanks for having me. And yeah, let's,
Before we close it out,
yeah.
I have 3 questions that I ask every guest.
Oh boy.
So if you do know your purpose, what is it? And if you don't, what do you think it is in life?
I think my purpose in life, at least self-imposed, is to matter to people. I think I've given myself this job to, initially it was just, I want to make people smile, but then I realized it goes a little bit deeper. And I don't even necessarily want to be remembered. I just want to be a positive influence in the lives of the people around me. And I want to be someone that they think about when, they are in a position where they have something to share, or when they're thinking about their loved ones. Very selfishly, I just want to matter to people. And I think that's my purpose, is just to make the most of my presence in the world. 'Cause I don't think we're put on this earth to, be alone. I'm stealing that from One Piece. Nico Robin fans, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And I've kind of already asked this question to you, but I'll ask it again, slightly different.
Okay. Okay. I'm listening.
What do you hope to achieve in the near future?
I will be, because I'm getting better at saying I will instead of
Good.
I want to.
Yeah.
I will put out a full-length album in the next year. I will go on another tour, and I will tell my friends that I love them whenever I see them. That's something that I want to do.
Last question. If you could talk to your childhood self, what would you say and why?
This is, I realized very recently, sort of trauma point for me, where in media that I listen to and watch, this is the long version, by the way.
Yeah.
I went to go see Barbie and cried a lot, but also I cried for little Nick, who didn't get the guidance that I needed at a young age, from the people that I thought I needed it from, to, be a good boy and to be a caring and loving and gentle boy. So to my kid self, I would say, hey buddy, how's it going? Is your favorite Pokemon still Cyndaquil? Good. He gets an evolution later down the line. You don't need to know about that, but you're doing great, and one day it'll be hard, but you'll be comfortable with your body and who you are, and you'll find people that love you, and you'll find things that you're good at. Because right now, I know there's some days where it feels like you don't have any of those things, but your mom loved you, your sister loved you, your future other brothers and sisters, they also love you. You just don't know it yet. And you are going to grow up and matter to a lot of people. So keep it up. And also, you're going to quit baseball, so don't try that hard. It's really fine.
Well, on that note, Nick, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you driving all the way up here.
Thanks,
and
Josh.
we'll have you again.
I look forward to it.